in 9 News, curfew is coming. An exasperated Premier locks us in for longer, blaming the weekend revellers who ignored the rules. Police promise $5,000 fines for dozens of oblivious engagement party guests. Parents already at their wits' end despair after playgrounds and skate parks are closed. Thousands of Afghans make a last-ditch effort to get out as the Taliban's new reign begins. No jail for the teenage girl in a stolen car who wiped out an innocent pedestrian. And Denise Drysdale leads tributes to the little Aussie battler, Ernie Sigley, who's died aged 82.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. In just 3 hours, Melbourne will be back under curfew. It will be illegal to be outside your home after 9 p.m. in a return to the country's harshest COVID regulations as the Delta outbreak refuses to relent. Lockdown's been extended for at least another 2 weeks after the Premier, furious at COVID rule breakers, tightened restrictions. State political reporter Mark Santomartino.
Illegal parties and pub crawls leaving millions in lockdown with an almighty hangover.
They are choices and they will keep us all locked down for longer than we should be. I'm angry, we're all angry.
Melbourne's lockdown will not end for at least another 2 weeks. The Premier bringing back a 9 o'clock curfew on Brett Sutton's advice.
We are right on the cliff edge here, but that if we can pull back from it, we can absolutely get to the finish line that we know we want to get to.
The Chief Health Officer backing a rule he famously didn't recommend last year, a curfew the Police Association doesn't support.
They are really under the pump at the moment, and it's starting to wear thin.
The time for discretion is over. We will be issuing infringements.
On-the-spot fines of more than $1,800 will apply to new rules, including a 2-person exercise limit and a ban on removing your mask to drink alcohol.
Not hang around and turn the footpath into a pub. Pubs are shut for a reason.
Playgrounds are back off limits too, despite being outdoors, over fears parents are congregating and children spreading the virus.
It's simply impossible to disinfect the space between different groups.
To keep them physically active, we just have to be more creative and dig deep, but it's going to be hard.
Permits for authorised workers will also return. Major construction sites will be cut to 25% capacity, while only 5 workers will be allowed on smaller projects.
We haven't seen transmission on construction sites, but we don't want to wait for it.
Professor Sutton raising eyebrows when saying a curfew is not a constraint on freedom.
The curfew is not the constraint. The stay-at-home directions are the constraint and the curfew supports.
If you want to walk your dog at 9 o'clock at night, are you really exposing anyone to risk? There's no evidence that you are.
One of today's 22 cases was infected at that illegal engagement party. 11 are linked to Altaqua College, 2 are from Glenroy West Primary. 1 household case has been added to each of the CS Square, Wolf Cafe and Newport Football Club clusters. Newport later linked to 2 mystery cases in Altona North. Dandenong's mystery case has infected 1 contact, with another 2 mystery cases found in Carlton, living in one of Lygon Street's public housing towers.
Close connection to another household that they were doing some caring work for. That other household has, although tested negative, has moved into hotel quarantine as well.
Tonight, 6 Victorians are in hospital, including a child in intensive care.
They're not on a ventilator, we know that much.
Lives and livelihoods, the Chief Health Officer says, can only be saved with restrictions until 80% of Victoria is vaccinated.
I don't want us to be at 25 through September, October, November, December.
Despite the difficulty of this and the pressure and the stress and the anxiety and the frustration, sadly none of that works against this virus.
Mark, we're being asked to adhere to the curfew from 9 o'clock tonight.
The new rules don't legally kick in until midnight, Pete, but the Premier has asked all Melburnians, all 5 million of us, to be tucked away inside at home from 9 o'clock tonight. The hope is that the curfew limits movement and also stops this explosion in exposure sites. There are now more than 500 online, and one that's just been added as a Tier 1 site is a Tyre Plus in Newport, where it looks like an infected case has worked there for 8 straight days between the 2nd and the 9th of August. That is a delay in infection to symptoms to getting tested that we've seen all too often in this lockdown, and it's hoped with almost nothing else to do, more Victorians will be coming forward to get a swab. Pete?
Mark Santomartino. The party's well and truly over, with anyone who attended the Caulfield North Engagement Bash facing $5,000 fines. The private event has sparked a seismic shift in the police response to COVID breaches after the groom-to-be mocked Melbourne's restrictions. Laura Turner reports.
Victorians aghast at the sheer audacity of this.
Clearly this is legal because this is a group therapy session.
69 people, including doctors, allegedly crammed into a private home last Wednesday to party.
The thing that makes me angriest, it takes away and it devalues the amazing work that millions and millions of Victorians are doing.
But two of those in the crowd were COVID positive.
Selfish. I don't think you could describe that in any other words.
Along with this family's neighbours,
well, let's hope they get the book thrown at them.
Police have come down hard.
That's going to be over $350,000 worth of fines. That's an expensive engagement party. If anyone gets a warning moving forward from here on in, they're going to be very lucky. The time for discretion is over.
Family of party hosts Yoni Rubin and Michal Frank run a Jewish spa.
The first time a woman goes to the mikveh is just before she gets married.
And have gone to ground today. Responding to criticism, the mother of the groom said in a message, "We did wrong, but the hate coming our way is just so mean. Look into your heart and try to find forgiveness." Jewish leaders have already experienced anti-Semitic backlash because of this party, but insist the choice this group made to attend had nothing to do with religion, and no one is more angry about it than they are.
When I saw the video, I was sickened, and I was shamed as being part of this community, and I was very sad.
Jewish leaders stressing the regret this family is feeling.
Look, they're devastated. I mean, they've done the wrong thing, we understand that, but they're a young couple.
But the ramifications could be enormous.
Well, at this stage it's a transmission event, but it has the potential to grow.
Laura Turner, 9 News.
Frustrated parents have described the closure of playgrounds and skate parks as a kick in the guts. Families will be forced to be more creative with their limited time outdoors, with fears of further mental health damage. Mimi Becker has the story.
In testing times, it's the little things that can bring so much joy.
I like going on the monkey bars. I like it because I can see my friends and I have something to do instead of just on my screen.
But from 11:59 tonight, playgrounds across Melbourne will be out of bounds.
It makes me sad because, it's something to do and I can't do anything anymore.
The playgrounds are a bit of a saving grace. It's really hard. It's just another layer of how hard this has been.
For mother of 3, Lana Meltzer, while a tough call, she says it's the right decision.
We've been here on the weekends, even this park specifically, and it is packed out. It's virtually impossible to social distance.
Along with play equipment, outdoor basketball rings, skate parks and outdoor exercise equipment will all be closed.
I thought what we have currently was working, but perhaps the powers that be don't believe that's the case.
The increased transmission among children, a tough balancing act to keep everyone safe.
There is evidence that children playing outside is a potential cause of transmission, yes.
Families are doing it tough at the moment, and for some families they don't have backyards, so there isn't always that many places for children to play.
Health experts encouraging parents to get creative when it comes to play, while flagging the possibility of masks for children too.
Let's think of other ways that we can get kids outside, playing and interacting, even if it's in a COVID-safe way.
We just have to stay positive and hope this ends sooner than later. I just hope it's only 2 weeks.
Mimi Becker, 9 News.
The grimmest day yet in New South Wales, where 478 cases and 7 deaths have emerged. Only 97 of the infections were in isolation, with the Premier describing the community transmission numbers as disturbingly high.
Too many people are infectious in the community, and it is critical that we all heed and take part in the actions we're required to undertake.
Among the deaths, 3 men and a woman in their 80s, a man and woman in their 70s, and a man in his 40s. Questions have been asked of Tiger star Dion Prestia after a photo surfaced of him at the now infamous Richmond pub crawl. Ayrton Woolley's following developments there. Ayrton, what's the club had to say?
Well, Pete, Richmond is investigating after it became aware of a photo that appeared to show Dion Prestia, the now infamous pub crawl at Richmond on the weekend. But I've spoken with the AFL and his management tonight, and they're both pretty confident that there was no breach of the AFL's protocols, of which they are, of course, much stricter for the players during these COVID times. I'm told Prestia headed out for dinner to grab some takeaway dinner within his 5-kilometre radius. He was snapped alongside his housemate by someone in the passing crowd. So they're pretty confident no breach there. The AFL pretty keen to ensure there has been no breaches in the lead up to finals, given there's some really delicate negotiations ongoing with the West Australian government in particular. Now it seems this great venue, the MCG, is likely to be empty come September. While Queensland might have been footy's saviour last season, now it seems all roads lead to Perth, even if there's no deal just yet.
That hasn't been achieved at this point in time, but obviously we're working with the AFL on very strict guidelines around all these issues, and I don't think the AFL has made that decision.
Victoria's latest lockdown extension all but rules out any hope of crowds here this season, ensuring the home of footy could again be footy-free in September.
It's too early to say. What I'm most concerned about now is all of us pulling together, finding it within ourselves to drive these numbers down.
To ensure it has enough flexibility should teams need to quarantine in Western Australia, the AFL has scrapped the pre-finals bye. It means the opening night of this year's final series will now kick off in less than a fortnight. The bye could instead fall between the semi and preliminary final weeks, with the grand final still slated for September 25.
I mean, the MCG is our home ground, so I want to play there, but I sort of, it's the final series, you want to be playing in front of a crowd.
The question then will be, under what restrictions in WA? Already, families have been ruled out, and under the state's strict new border measures, anyone travelling from a high-risk area needs to be vaccinated. Victoria, at this stage, is listed as medium risk.
I would expect most footballers, in fact probably all, are already vaccinated. I certainly would have thought that would be a wise decision by the AFL.
The league wouldn't be drawn on that prospect as negotiations continue. Ayrton Woolley, 9 News.
The Taliban has declared the war in Afghanistan is over after insurgents stormed the capital, Kabul. Steve Marshall reports thousands are desperately trying to get out as the militant group tightens its grip on a nation it's waited 20 years to reclaim.
Posing in Kabul's presidential palace after seizing control of the capital, the Taliban's power grab was as swift as it was shocking. The militants' advance triggered mass panic at the capital's international airport. Desperate locals scrambled to board the last flights out, sprinting across the tarmac as gunshots rang out. Thousands of prisoners have been freed from jails, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda fighters. In scenes likened to the fall of Saigon, US choppers dominated the Kabul skyline, whisking embassy staff to safety.
This is manifestly not Saigon. The inability of Afghan security forces to defend their country has played a very powerful role in what we've seen.
The Taliban demanded a peaceful transfer of power within days. It was already theirs after the Afghan president fled the country to prevent a flood of bloodshed. I want to congratulate the Muslim Afghan people on this huge victory, this senior Taliban leader said, calling the success unexpected. People fear the Taliban takeover will see the group impose its hardline form of Islam. Many raced for the borders, others stayed, remaining defiant.
They are here. I'm not afraid of them. We are not the people who will, go back to the dark era.
The US is sending 1,000 new troops to join the 5,000 there to help with evacuations. A war overseen by 4 presidents. It's a foreign policy disaster for the new administration. This was Joe Biden 5 weeks ago.
The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Today, the president was briefed at Camp David, but made no public comment.
This is going to be a stain on this president and his presidency, and I think he's going to have blood on his hands for what they did.
From Donald Trump, who penned an agreement with the Taliban, it will go down as one of the greatest defeats in American history.
We were in Afghanistan for one overriding purpose, to deal with the folks who attacked us on 9/11. We've succeeded in achieving our objectives.
The war was supposed to bring a stable regime to an unstable region, but after 20 years, it's ending as it began. Steve Marshall, 9 News.
Meanwhile, there are grave concerns tonight for women and girls in Afghanistan. The Taliban is refusing to rule out stonings and public executions for anyone who breaks the law, as loved ones in Australia fear the worst. More from Natalia Cooper.
As the Taliban takes Kabul, Sarah Karimi runs. They are coming to kill us, she says. The freedoms and futures of these faces dashed. Girls and women in Afghanistan now at the mercy of the Islamic militants.
I've been on the call with so many women. They were crying, they were in tears, and they were saying that there's nothing left in the country. The country has shattered into pieces.
Afghan refugee Najiba Wazifadost, who now lives in Sydney, holds her daughter Sophia.
Thousands of other daughters, just like my own daughter, is at high risk in the country and also at high risk of getting raped, at high risk of getting kidnapped. Many other Sophias in my country are not going to have any future.
Najiba fled Taliban rule as a young girl 21 years ago. Back then, women were unable to work, girls forbidden from an education. There are fears history will repeat. Images of women on Kabul shopfronts are being painted over. Schools are closing, many women too scared to leave their homes. Samin is stuck in the capital.
Of course that we don't feel safe. They cannot go to job because there are Taliban in the street.
The former Minister of Education awaits her fate.
I might face consequences that I never even dreamed of. And I guess that's the price that we pay for trying to make this world a little better.
While some have managed to escape.
Our friends are going to get killed. They're going to kill us. Our women are not going to have any more rights.
The Taliban claims they will allow women to get an education, but at the same time they haven't ruled out stonings and public executions for lawbreakers.
I can't say right now, but it is up to the courts, in the judges, in the laws.
Shema Hussein, who now lives in Melbourne, says her country has once again become a prison for women.
It was broken, we built it up, then it is broken now again.
Najiba is begging the Australian government to evacuate as many women and children as possible.
We really need to help those people right now. I'm talking right now.
Natalia Cooper, 9 News.
And Australia's airlift of citizens and refugees is on hold because of the chaos in Kabul. The first RAAF aircraft carrying troops is on its way, but will wait in the UAE until the airport is declared safe. Here's Chris Uhlmann.
The veterans of Australia's longest war now wonder what they were fighting for.
It's really, really disappointing, disgusting, makes me feel angry, ashamed.
41 Australian soldiers fell in Afghanistan, a tragic roll call that ran from February 2002 to July 2014.
No Australian who's ever fallen in our uniform has ever died in vain, ever.
What is the legacy of our time in Afghanistan?
Australia's military commitment began immediately after the September 11 attacks, when John Howard was in Washington.
Provisions of the ANZUS Treaty should be invoked in relation to the attack upon the United States.
More than 26,000 Australian soldiers would serve in Afghanistan. The Army website still defines the mission as to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations, to remove the Taliban from power and to defeat Al-Qaeda. Both major parties supported the war as the mission changed into nation building.
Australia will stay engaged with Afghanistan to the end of this decade at least.
With the Taliban on the verge of retaking Kabul, there are fears for 130 Australian citizens and more than 200 former embassy guards and interpreters.
We're getting increasingly desperate calls overnight from our clients in Afghanistan and from some of their families here in Australia.
A plane carrying troops left Queensland's Amberley Air Force Base today. It will fly to Al Minhad in the United Arab Emirates. A Globemaster will soon follow. But the Australian airlift may be stalled indefinitely because of the chaos at Kabul airport. The Australian rescue mission won't be cleared to land in Kabul until US forces have secured the airport, and no one can say when that will happen. And it's not just former Australian soldiers that feel betrayed by the panicked retreat from Kabul.
I think the people of Afghanistan have been betrayed by their leaders and by outside powers.
Chris Ullman, 9 News.
There's been an arrest over a sickening attack in Geelong. Here's Eliza Rugg.
Pete, a 23-year-old man has been charged over the sexual assault of a 90-year-old woman in her aged care home. I'll have the details next.
Plus, a fresh calamity barrels towards earthquake-ravaged Haiti and the death of the little Aussie battler. Tony Jones pays tribute to Ernie Sigley. A man's in custody over the sickening sex attack on an elderly woman at a Geelong aged care home. Eliza Rugg joins me with the details. Eliza, the suspect has just been charged.
He has, Pete, a 23-year-old man from St Albans Park. He was arrested this morning and we found out he's just been charged in the last couple of minutes. The most serious of those charges is rape. He has also been charged with aggravated burglary, recklessly causing serious injury, assault and theft. He was arrested in the same Geelong suburb where this 90-year-old woman was sexually assaulted in her aged care home yesterday morning. She bravely managed to fight off the attacker and raise the alarm. Police said, understandably, there was significant community concern following this incident. They're happy to have made an arrest just over 24 hours after this manhunt started. This man, this 23-year-old, he'll stay in police custody tonight and Pete will see him in court tomorrow morning.
Eliza Rugg, thanks for that report. The desperate search for survivors is gathering pace tonight as the tragic toll climbs following Haiti's 7.2 magnitude earthquake. Almost 1,300 people are confirmed dead and more than 5,000 injured. The rescue effort is now a race against time as a tropical storm barrels towards the island nation, threatening floods and mudslides. Television and radio favourite Ernie Sigley is today being remembered for a rapid-fire wit that helped him stay at the top for much of his career. Known as the little Aussie battler, Ernie has died aged 82 after a long battle with Alzheimer's. Tony Jones compiled this tribute.
He was part of a golden era where talk shows were the talk of the town.
How about a French massage?
Now you are talking. I'll be in that.
Hi, Frenchie.
Yes?
Ernie Sigley oozed a knockabout charm that took him to the top.
There's so much bull dust on it.
He landed his first radio job as a turntable operator on 3DB at just 14. Years later, the lights of TV beckoned.
No one ever believes me, Vibe. What's my favourite meal in the can? What do I always come and ask for?
Pine sauce and a hot dog.
And with him for much of the journey was Sigley's on-air partner, Denise Drysdale, who today said, "I will cherish the memories of all the mischief we got up to together. He still makes me laugh just thinking about him. Love and respect, dear Ernie."
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
You look like an old Mae West. A young Mae West, too.
Ernie and Ding Dong would prove quite the double act. Their partnership extended beyond the screen to the stage.
True love means planning a life for two, being together the whole day through.
Having started his talk show career in Adelaide with Channel 9, he moved to Melbourne, where in the early 70s he delivered the network record ratings. But he remained a reluctant star.
I don't want to be a national television star. I'd rather just be it. I don't believe in the word star anyhow.
Such was his popularity, Ernie would win a staggering 21 Logies, including the gold in 1975.
All my life, you know, in this business, it's been my dream, you know. It really has. And I've got it, you know, and
A regular on the Ernie Sigley show was Pete Smith.
I remember the spontaneity of the whole thing, the flying by the seat of your pants. They're cliches, but they are so apt when you talk about somebody like Ernie Sigley. Unprepared, and yet he used to kill them night after night.
In the 90s, Ernie moved into morning television and the mayhem followed.
Pardon me.
From 1996 through to his retirement in 2008, Ernie was the king of afternoons on 3AW. For the past few years, however, Ernie was confined to a nursing home, struck down by Alzheimer's. By his side throughout, his wife of 47 years, Glenys, and his 4 children. But even in his final years, there was the Ernie of old.
When we visited him, was the same character was there, but he couldn't express it. So he flirted with Glenys with his eyes, and he flirted with my wife with his eyes, and then just stared at me with complete disregard, just like the old days.
Ernie Sigley died yesterday, aged 82, from the effects of his Alzheimer's. The little Aussie battler need battle no more.
But I did it my way.
Tony Jones, 9 News.
And legendary Sydney newsreader Brian Henderson was farewelled today. The COVID crisis allowed just 10 loved ones to attend the funeral of the 89-year-old who died after a lengthy battle with cancer. Hendo delivering one final broadcast.
No, you are not hearing things. Obviously, this is pre-recorded. I was lucky enough to do a job that I loved and have lived a full and happy life. Don't be sad.
Organising much of the service himself, Henderson also dedicated a love song to his wife, Mardi, while best mate Col Joy remembered him as a lovable scallywag. Lavinia's here now. Much cooler around Melbourne today.
Quite a bit, Pete. A southwesterly change moved through this morning and that brought cloudy skies and a few patchy showers. So even though it stayed mild overnight with a low of 11, the city only managed to reach 14. That's 5 degrees cooler than yesterday. We're in quite a typical weather pattern at the moment. The front has now moved out over the Tasman. A high is sitting over the Bight, bringing cooler southwesterly winds. But once that high moves over us, we'll get a change in fortunes and some warmer days. Then in true Melbourne style, another front will arrive, bringing showers for the weekend. The weather is doing its part to keep us indoors. I'll have the full 7-day forecast for you later in the bulletin, Pete.
OK, thank you, Lavinia. A distraught Bayside school community is remembering a 16-year-old pedestrian killed by an erratic driver. $200 to get the vaccine. That's the offer from a leading company. Will other businesses follow suit?
Pete, a publican says he was closed all weekend, so he's not happy the Chief Commissioner singled out his venue.
The victim of a pedestrian crash in Melbourne southeast has been identified as Year 10 Mentone Grammar student Lachlan McLaren. He was killed when a driver lost control of his ute while travelling in the wrong direction on the Nepean Highway around 5 o'clock last night. A 31-year-old Dandenong man is in custody, accused of hitting the 16-year-old and injuring another pedestrian. A Northcote pub is disappointed it was singled out by the Chief Commissioner over a weekend street gathering. Elizabeth Moss is at the Peacock Hotel. Lizzie, the publican says the venue didn't break any rules.
That's right, Pete. He's actually told me that the pub has not served a single drink since August 5, but sadly it's been caught up in this conversation around large gatherings and street parties simply because it was outside the hotel that a large amount of people, 80 people, chose to gather over the weekend. They were having food and drink. They were seen dancing and listening to music that was coming from a nearby residence. This is behaviour the Chief Commissioner says is not on.
We've seen, as reported, the Peacock Hotel where there's some music being played by a person who lives nearby and people sitting in the street drinking. Every one of these things is just totally unacceptable.
And we haven't done any takeaway, no takeaway cocktails, no food, no nothing. Yeah, so it's a bit of a shame that people jump to conclusions.
Now, I'm told the Commissioner's comments were simply about those who were outside the pub at the time. The pub's owner has told me he simply wishes that the police had talked to him first before naming his venue. Pete?
Thank you, Elizabeth Moss. Young adults have rushed to receive AstraZeneca after all state-run hubs today introduced the vaccine to anyone over 18. Telstra has also led the way, offering generous incentives to encourage thousands of employees to get the jab. Dougal Beattie explains.
Touching down from Poland, 1 million doses of extra Pfizer landed safely, today approved for use in Australia as Victoria's vaccination hubs got off to a flying start.
I feel safer, I guess.
From today, all 50 state-run centres are offering AstraZeneca to those over the age of 18. 25-year-old Bree Adamson isn't waiting for Pfizer. After booking her AstraZeneca jab at a medical clinic for late September, she leapt at the chance to secure her vaccination earlier.
I just want to be fully vaccinated, so I can't wait.
28-year-old Maddie Pogue waited 20 minutes for a walk-up appointment at Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital. She admits she was initially hesitant, but after speaking with her doctor, she chose to be immunised as soon as possible.
We've all been so keen to get this vaccine for so long, it just hasn't been available.
10,000 shots were delivered in the past 24 hours and nearly 26% of Victorians are now double-dosed, with younger adults leading the charge.
I think having the availability of the vaccine to that age group now has definitely made a difference.
And now big business is joining the vaccine race too. Companies like Telstra offering generous incentives to employees to get inoculated. The telco providing the equivalent of $200 in rewards for any employee who gets vaccinated. It can be used towards purchasing coffee machines, barbecues, vacuums and gift cards.
We want to do our bit by encouraging our employees to get vaccinated and also to help make sure that we're protecting our customers.
Dougal Beattie, 9 News.
A teenager in a stolen car mowed down a pedestrian in Footscray, but she won't go to jail. The shocking vision next in 9 News. Crown investigating after a security boss was unmasked on 60 Minutes as a neo-Nazi. And the much-loved butcher calls it a day after 6 decades chewing the fat. Crown Casino is investigating an employee after he was exposed as a member of Australia's largest neo-Nazi group. 960 Minutes infiltrated the National Socialist Network last night, revealing Crown security manager and former Special Forces soldier Daniel Tedisco is a member and supports the group financially. The casino says it is deeply concerned by the allegations and does not condone discrimination on any level. A hoon in a stolen car who mowed down an innocent pedestrian in Footscray has escaped conviction. Locals are angry the 17-year-old driver was only sentenced to youth supervision, despite already breaching a similar order. Neri Tai has this exclusive investigation.
An out-of-control car barrels through the streets of Footscray, mounting the footpath before ploughing into a pedestrian. Shoppers are forced to run for their lives as the allegedly stolen Honda wreaks havoc down Paisley Street.
It was doing burnouts, so they were going nuts.
5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Behind the wheel is a 17-year-old girl.
It's bad to see that there's teenagers out there that, you know, that don't care.
Fox Yamata's father was just metres away when he saw the young woman hit.
The car is driving through her. You know, that time everyone shocked.
The victim was taken to the Royal Melbourne Hospital with a twisted ankle and bruising.
Could have been more people injured at the time. Thank God didn't get to a point where you found 5-6 people in that incident.
The car was allegedly stolen from Anytime Fitness in Sunshine on July 9. The following day, it was involved in a hit-run crash in Footscray. An hour later, the 17-year-old smashed into a wall in Trugo Lane, rupturing a gas pipe. Around 5 p.m, police tried to approach the vehicle on Paisley Street, but the teen driver and her passenger took off, driving erratically. Narrowly missing a bus and other cars, they then hit the pedestrian and allegedly fled the scene before heading onto Droop Street. It was here on Droop Street where they abandoned their car, stopping traffic and begging another motorist to drive them away. But police pounced and arrested them here at the scene, where they allegedly refused a preliminary breath test. Last week, the 17-year-old driver pleaded guilty and was sentenced to a 12-month youth supervision order without a conviction. The teenager will be required to report to a youth justice unit, undertake supervised community work if directed, and cannot reoffend.
It's quite an onerous sentence. If they step out of line whilst they're on that order, they'll find themselves back before the court and they can be resentenced.
But in May, the teen driver was found guilty of breaching a previous youth supervision order imposed in September 2020.
That's unacceptable. If you're old enough to steal a car, then then she's got the brain to go into the car and take it and drive around Hall of Footscray like a hooligan.
Neri Tai, 9 News.
To finance now, and the All Ordinaries Index fell flat today, dropping by 48 points. 3 of the big 4 banks finished lower, while the miners also continued their recent decline. Our dollar is buying 73 US cents and just shy of 53 pence. A much-loved Healesville butcher has decided to hang up his apron after 6 decades of slicing and dicing meat. Locals have told Alan Rascal they'll miss his friendly face.
A Healesville legend, 79-year-old butcher Eric Duff.
I'm the meat man.
He's been a butcher for 65 years, having started his apprenticeship at 14.
It was 7 years because I was advised to do the master butcher, which added an extra 2 years.
Son Ben followed in Dad's footsteps and has worked alongside his dad for 20 years.
He's my best friend, he's my mentor, he's been my teacher.
Long-term customers love him.
It's lovely coming into the shop because you've got that friendly banter.
Eric's been in the same shop for half a century and says a lot has changed in meat.
New current TV chefs have created a new name for just about everything. Once upon a time you burnt the steak, now you caramelise it.
Heading toward 80, Eric has decided it's time to retire and will call it a day in a couple of weeks. He'll miss it. When it comes to going cold turkey and retiring, the stakes are always high, and while Eric loves a good roast, he tells me he won't miss all those jokes about the butcher. So Eric, until we meet again. Alan Rascal, 9 News.
Now with sport, Tony Jones.
50 years and he's finally met a live pork chop. Anyway, thanks, Pete. Coming up after the break, Caroline Wilson with her take on how and where the final series will be played out. Breaking news from Carlton, we're live with details. Eddie has called it quits. It's season over for the skipper at Punt Road, while the EPL's reigning champs make it a spluttering start.
Hello again, and after 9 days of maximums above the August average, it's been a bit cooler around the city today. Despite a healthy starting point of 11 degrees, the mercury only climbed another 3 degrees throughout the day. Most suburbs stayed in double figures all overnight, although Ferny Creek failed to make it into double figures all day, only climbing from 6 to 9, with around 6 millimetres of showers from the early hours of the morning. Temperatures struggled right across Melbourne, with improvements of 4 or 5 degrees from the overnight minimums. Showers have been patchy, 3 millimetres at Frankston, Rosebud and Phillip Island, but generally less than a millimetre. Those showers have been confined to areas on and south of the ranges, with dry conditions through the north. The northeast had a cold night though. Wodonga dipped to 2 degrees, Rutherglen -1. For most areas, maximums have been slightly below the August average, but it warmed up to 18 degrees through the Mallee. A cold front moved through southern parts of Victoria overnight, pushing in cloud and showers and switching the winds around from northerlies to cooler southwesterlies. A high over the Bight will continue that southwesterly airflow tomorrow, but it also promises to deliver some warmer days. It should be sitting above us on Wednesday, so it'll be a lovely calm day without any nasty wind chill. But tomorrow the cooler conditions will continue, along with a few patchy showers through the south. And while it'll stay dry throughout the north, the cloud will still be with us, keeping maximums in the low to mid-teens. Once again, a little warmer through the Mallee. Light patchy showers will continue across Melbourne tonight, mostly through southern and eastern suburbs. They'll be a little more widespread tomorrow morning, but then easing through the afternoon. Up to 2 millimetres for western suburbs, 4 to 6 through the east. It'll be another mild night. Frankston is only expected to dip to 10 degrees. A little cooler for Epping and Tullamarine, down to 7, and there's likely to be fog patches through the Dandenong Ranges. Then maximums will be similar to today, mostly 13 and 14. Geelong is heading for 15 again. The southwesterly breezes won't be as strong as today and should become light in the evening. Up to 3 millimetres of showers for the city, and after an overnight low of 10 degrees, it should reach 14 again. Cloudy skies will hang around on Wednesday, but it'll warm up a little, a top of 16. 17 on Thursday with a bit more blue sky about. 17 again on Friday, but overcast and windy, with showers picking up in the afternoon, up to 6 millimetres. We're heading for 17 on Saturday as well, with showers during the morning, 18 degrees on Sunday. Monday is shaping up as the wettest day in the outlook, with up to 8 millimetres, and it'll be cooler as well, back to 15 degrees. It's expected to be even cooler than that tomorrow, a forecast maximum of 14 degrees, with up to 3 millimetres of showers, mostly early in the day, then warming up after that, Pete.
OK, thank you, Lavinia. And Melbourne, that's what's news this Monday as we say goodbye to a treasured member of the Channel 9 and 3AW families, Ernie Sigley. Good night.
Ding dong, I've been waiting for you. Hey, hey, Ernie, I wanna marry you too. True love means planning our life for two, being together the whole day through. True love means waiting and hoping that soon wishes will